It is a reminder to myself to appreciate the place that I am in and to take in every moment of being in the here and the now. Ma tovu ohalecha Yaakov, how beautiful are your tents, O Jacob. In my new daily routine, I cannot help but be reminded of this blessing with which we are about to sing together, as we too appreciate this beautiful Mishkan space that we are in on this beautiful sunny day. We sing Ma Tovu on page 149.
Ma tovu, ohalecha Yaakov, mishkenotecha Yisrael, ma tovu, ohalecha Yaakov, mishkenotecha Yisrael, vani berov chastecha, avo betecha, אשתחווה על קודשך ביראתך, מה טובו, אוהליך יעקב, משכנותיך ישראל, אדוני אהבתי בהון ביתך, ומקום משכן כבודך, משכן כבודך, ואני אשתחווה ואכרע אברך לפני אדוני עושי, מה טובו, אוהליך יעקב, משכנותיך ישראל, ואני תפילתי לך, אדוני אל רצון, אלוהים ברוב חסדך, אלוהים ברוב חסדך, ענני באמת אישך, מה טובו, אוהליך יעקב, משכנותיך ישראל. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, אשר קידשנו במצוותיו וציוונו לעסוק בדברי תורה.
Adonai, our God, make the words of your Torah sweet in our mouths and in the mouths of your people Israel, so that we and our children shall come to know your name and study Torah for its own sake. Praised are you, Adonai, teacher of Torah to your people Israel. Praised are you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of the universe, who has chosen us from all peoples by giving us your Torah. Praised are you, Adonai, giver of Torah.
יברכך אדוני וישמרך, יאר אדוני פניו אליך ויחונך, יישא אדוני פניו אליך וישם לך שלום.
Elu devarim she'en lahem shi'ur. These are the obligations without measure, whose reward too is without measure, in this world and in the world to come. Kibud av va'em, to honor father and mother. Ugemilut chasadim, to act responsibly one to the other. V'hashgamat beit hamidrash shacharit ve'arvit, to hasten to the house of study both morning and evening. V'hachnasat orchim, to welcome the stranger. Uvikur cholim, to visit the sick. Ve'achnasat kala, to rejoice with bride and groom. Ulevayat hamet, to accompany the dead to the grave. Ve'iyun tfilah, to pray with sincerity. V'hava'at shalom bein adam lachavero, to make peace between one and another. V'talmud Torah keneged kulam, but the study of Torah rivals them all.
Elohai, Elohai, neshama, shenatata bi tehorahi. Elohai, Elohai, neshama, shenatata bi tehorahi. Ata perata, ata yetzarta, ata nefachta bi, ve'ata meshamera, meshamra bekirbi. Elohai, Elohai, neshama, shenatata bi tehorahi. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan us chvivina leavchi ben yom uven laila. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, she'asani Yisrael. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, she'asani ben chorin. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, she'asani kirtzono. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, pokeach ivrim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, malbish harumim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, matir asurim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, roka haaretz al hamayim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, she'asa li kol et tzorki. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, hamechin mitzadei kaver. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, ozer Yisrael b'gvura. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, oter Yisrael b'tifara. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, hanoten le'ayev koach. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, hamavir she'na me'enai utnuma me'afapai.
Sovereign of all the worlds, not in reliance upon the righteousness of our deeds do we place our longings before you. We look instead to your abundant mercy. For what are we? What is our life, and what our faithfulness? What is our goodness, and what our vaunted strength? What shall we say in your presence, Adonai, our God and God of all ages? Are not all the conquerors as nothing before you, and those of renown as though they had not been? The learned as if they had no knowledge, and the wise as if without understanding. Many of our works are in vain, and our days pass away like a shadow. Since all our achievements are insubstantial as mist, how dare we look upon ourselves as higher than the beasts? Yet despite our frailty, we are your people, bound to your covenant, and called to your service. We therefore thank and praise you, and proclaim the holiness of your name. How fortunate are we, how good is our portion, how pleasant our destiny, how beautiful our inheritance. Ashrenu ma tov chelkenu, uma na'im gorelenu, uma yafa yerushatenu.
God is the one who spoke, page 156, and breathed us into being. Baruch She'amar. Baruch she'amar v'haya olam, Baruch hu, Baruch hoseh v'reshit, Baruch omer v'hoseh, Baruch kozer u'mekayem, Baruch merachem al haaretz, Baruch merachem al habriot, Baruch mishalem sachar tov l'reav, Baruch chai la'ad, v'kayam la'netzach, Baruch poter u'matzil, Baruch shemo from the top, Baruch she'amar v'haya olam, Baruch hu, Baruch oseh v'reshit, Baruch omer v'hoseh, Baruch kozer u'mekayem, Baruch merachem al haaretz, Baruch merachem al habriot, Baruch mishalem sachar tov l'reav, Baruch chai la'ad, v'kayam la'netzach, Baruch poter u'matzil, Baruch shemo.
Top of page 157. With songs of praise we will glorify you. We will speak your name and proclaim your sovereignty. For you are our ruler, the only one, the life of the universe. Praised are you, Adonai, the sovereign God who is exalted with songs of praise.
Hodul Adonai ki tov ki leolam chasto, Hodul Elohei ha-Elohim ki leolam chasto, leolam chasto. Hodul Adonai Adonim ki leolam chasto, leosen niflaot gedolot levato ki leolam chasto. Ki leolam chasto, ki leolam chasto, leoseh hashamayim bitfuna, ki leolam chasto, leolam chasto. Ki leolam chasto, leraka haaretz al hamayim, ki leolam chasto, leolam chasto, leoseh orim gedolim, ki leolam chasto, et hashemesh lememshalet bayom, ki leolam chasto, et hayareach vechochavim lememshalot balayla, ki leolam chasto, lemakem melachim gedolim, ki leolam chasto, venatan artzam lenachala, ki leolam chasto, nachala leYisrael avado, ki leolam chasto, ki leolam chasto. Noten lechem lechol basar, ki leolam chasto, hodul el hashamayim, ki leolam chasto, ki leolam chasto. Ki leolam chasto, ki leolam chasto, hodul el hashamayim, ki leolam chasto, leolam chasto. Mizmor shel-yom ha-Shabbat, tov lehodot la-Adonai, ולזמר לשמך עליון, ולזמר לשמך עליון, להגיד בבוקר חסדך ואמונתך פללות, עלי עשור ועלי נבל, עלי היגיון בכינור, מזמור שיר ליום השבת, טוב להודות לאדוני, ולזמר לשמך עליון, ולזמר לשמך עליון, כי שימחתני אדוני בפועלך, במעשה ידיך ארנן, מה קלו מעשיך אדוני, מאוד עמקו מחשבותיך. מזמור שיר ליום השבת, טוב להודות לאדוני, ולזמר לשמך עליון, ולזמר לשמך עליון.
Ashrei, a blessing of God's many qualities and a blessing of joy. Ashrei, happy are those who dwell in your house, can be found on page 160.
אשרי יושבי ביתך עוד יהללוך סלה.
אשרי העם שככה לו, אשרי העם שאדוני אלוהיו.
תהילה לדוד ארוממך אלוהי המלך, ואברך שמך לעולם ועד.
בכל יום אברכך, והללה שמך לעולם ועד.
גדול אדוני מהולל מאוד, ולגדולתו אין חקר.
דור לדור ישבח מעשיך, וגבורתך יגידו.
הדר כבוד הודיך, ודברי נפלאותיך עשיך.
לזוז נורתך יאמרו, וגדולתך ספרנה.
זכר רב טובך יביעו, וצדקתך ירננו.
חנון ורחום אדוני, ערך אפיים וגדול חסד.
טוב אדוני לכל, ורחמיו על כל מעשיו.
יודוך אדוני כל מעשיך, וחסידך יברכוך.
כבוד מלכותך יאמרו, גבורתך ידברו.
להודיע לפני האדם גבורתיו, וכבוד האדם מלכותו.
מלכותך מלכות כל עולמים, וממשלתך בכל דור ודור.
צומח אדוני לכל הנופלים, וזוקף לכל הכפופים.
אין יכול אליך סברו, ואתה נותן להם את אוכלם בעתו.
פותח את ידיך, ומשביע לכל הרצון.
צדיק אדוני בכל דרך, וחסיד בכל מעשיו.
קרוב אדוני לכל קורב, לכל אשר יקראו באמת.
רצון ידיו יעשה, ואת שבתם ישמע ויושיעם.
שומר אדוני את כל אוהביו, ואת כל הרשעים ישמיע.
תהילת אדוני דבר פיו, ויברך כל בשר שם קודשו לעולם ועד.
ואנחנו נברך יה, מעתה ועד עולם, הללויה.
הללויה אל בקודשו, הללויה ברכי אחוזו, הללויה בגבורותיו. הללויה קרוב כולו, הללויה בתק השופר, הללויה בנבל וכינור. הללויה, 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 הללויה. Hallelujah, hallelujah,
Hallelu betof umachol, Hallelu beminim ve'ukav, Hallelu betziltzele shama. Hallelu betziltzele truha, Kol הנשמה תהלליה, כל הנשמה תהלליה. Hallelujah. Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Let me hear you. Hallelujah, hallelujah.
God of all that has been and all that is yet to be, God of all creation, sovereign of all generations, all praise to you. You guide the world with steadfast love, your creatures with tender mercy. You neither slumber nor sleep. You awaken the sleeping and arouse the dormant. You give voice to the silenced and freedom to the captive. You lift up the fallen and raise the oppressed. To you alone we give thanks. Though our mouths should overflow with song as the sea, our tongues with melody as the roaring waves, our lips with praise as the heaven's wide expanse, and though our eyes were to shine as the sun and the moon, our arms extend like eagle's wings, our feet speed swiftly as deer, still we could not fully thank you, Adonai our God and God of all ages, or praise your name enough for the abounding goodness you have bestowed upon our ancestors and on us.
האל בתעצומות עוזך, הגדול בכבוד שמך, הגיבור לנצח והנורא בנורתך, המלך היושב על כיסא רם ונישא, שוכן הר מרום וקדוש שמו, וכתוב לנו צדיקים באדוני לישרים, נאווה תהילה. בפי ישרים תתהלל, ובדברי צדיקים תתברך, ובלשון חסידים תתרומם, ובקרב קדושים תתקדש, ובמקלות רביבות עמך בית ישראל. ברינה יתפרש שמך מלכנו בכל דור ודור, ישתבח שמך ליד מלכנו. האל המלך הגדול והקדוש בשמיים וארץ, ברוך אתה אדוני אל המלך גדול ותשבחות, אל הודות אדון הנפלאות, הבוחר בשירי זמרה, מלך מלכי העולמים. יתגדל ויתקדש מרבה, ויעלמה דברה חירותי וימליך מלכותי, וחייכון ויומכון וחי לכל בית ישראל, בהגהלה ובזמן קריב, ואמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מברך, לעלם ולעלמי עלמיה. יתברך, יתברך וישתבח, ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא, ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל, שמי קודשה בריחו, לעילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה, דמירן בעלמה, ואמרו אמן. Ja, nein, 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 nein. Ja, nein, 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 nein. Ja, nein, 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 nein. Ja, nein, 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 nein. Baruchu et Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach Le'olam Va'ed. Ja, nein, 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 nein. Ja, nein, 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 nein. Ja, nein, 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 nein. Ja, nein, 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 nein. Ja, nein, nein.
Praised are you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of the universe, who fashions light and creates darkness, who makes peace and creates all things. All will thank you, all will praise you, all will declare, nothing is as holy as Adonai. All will exalt you, who gives everything form, Selah. You are the God who daily opens the doors of the eastern gates and unlocks the windows of the firmament. You bring out sun and moon from their hiding places and illuminate all the world and its inhabitants, created by your compassion. Hameir la'aretz v'ladarim aleha berachamim, uvetuvo mechadesh b'chol yom tamid ma'aseh v'reishit. Tidbarach Mashi'enu, al shevach ma'aseh yadecha, ve'al me'orei or she'asita yefa aruch hasela, or chadash al Tzion ta'ir, v'nizkeh chulanu mehera le'oro, baruch ata Adonai, yotzer ha'me'orot. Abounding is your love, Adonai our God, and great is your compassion, Avinu Malkeinu. Our ancestors were secure in your presence, and you taught them the laws of life. Be gracious now to us and teach us. Avinu, Av Harachaman, have compassion upon us. Inspire us to know and understand, to listen, learn, and teach, to observe and uphold with love all the teachings of your Torah.
והרננו בתורתך, ודבק ליבנו במצוותיך, ויחל לבבנו לאהבה וליראה את שמך, ולא נבוש, ולא נבוש, ולא נבוש לעולם ועד, כי בשם קודשך הגדול והנורא בטחנו, נגילה, נגילה ונשמחה, נגילה, נגילה בישועתך. כי אלו פועל ישועות אתה, ובנו בחרת, וקרבתנו לשמרך הגדול סלע באמת, להודות לך ולייחדך באהבה. ברוך אתה אדוני הבוחר בעמו ישראל באהבה. שמע ישראל אדוני אלוהינו אדוני אחד. ברוך שם כבור מלכותו לעולם ועד. ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך. והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ושוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם להיות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם.
We are on page 173 for our Ge'ulah blessing, our blessing of redemption. True and enduring, beloved and precious, awesome and adorned, good and beautiful is this eternal truth. The God of the universe is our sovereign, the rock of Jacob, our protecting shield. From generation to generation, O God, you endure and your name endures. Your throne is upright, your faithfulness everlasting. Steadfast and precious, your words are resplendent with life and sustaining power. They stand the test of time. Adonai, you redeemed us from Egypt and set us free from the house of bondage. In turn, your cherished ones offered songs of praise and melodies of thanks to you, the sovereign, living God. High and exalted, mighty and awesome, you humble the proud and raise the lowly. You free the captive and redeem the oppressed. You answer the moment we cry out. Praises to God Most High, who is praised and is praiseworthy. Moses, Miriam, and the children of Israel answered you with this song of rejoicing.
מי כמוך באלים אדוני, מי כמוך נדר בקודש, נורא תהילות עושה פלא, נורא תהילות עושה פלא. שירה חדשה שיבחו גאולים לשמך לשפת הים, יחד כולם הודו והמליכו ואמרו, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. מי כמוך באלים אדוני, מי כמוך נדר בקודש. צור ישראל קומם בעזרת ישראל, ופדחנו ממך יהודה וישראל. גו עלינו אדוני צבאות שמו, קדוש קדוש ישראל. יאללה 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 יאללה. ברוך אתה אדוני גאל ישראל. אדוני שפתי תפתח ופי אגיד תהילתך. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו, אלוהי אברהם, אלוהי יצחק ואלוהי יעקב, אלוהי שרה, אלוהי רבקה, אלוהי רחל ואלוהי לאה, האל הגדול, הגיבור והנורא, אל עליון, גומל חסדים טובים וקונה הכל, וזוכר חסדי אבות, ומביא גאולה לבני בניהם, למען שמו באהבה. מלך עוזר ומושיע ומגן, ברוך אתה אדוני, מגן אברהם ופוקד שרה. אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מחי מתים אתה רב להושיע, מוריד הטל, מכלכל החיים בחסד. סומך נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים. מי כמוך בעל גבורות ומרום מלך, מלך ממית ובחיה ומצמיח ישוע, ונאמן אתה לחיות מתים. ברוך אתה אדוני מחיי המתים. נקדש את שמך בעולם, כשם שמקדישים אותו בשמי מרום, ככתוב על יד נביאך, וכרזה זה ואמר, קדוש 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 אדוני צבאות, מלוא כל הארץ כבודו. התיר אדירנו אדוני אדוננו, מתיר שמך בכל הארץ. ברוך כבוד אדוני ממקומו. אחד הוא אלוהינו, הוא אבינו מלכנו, הוא מושיענו וכוי ישמיענו, ברחמיו לעיני כל חי. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, ימלוך אדוני לעולם. אלוהי ציון לדור ודור, הללויה. לדור ודור נגיד קודלך, ולנצח נצחים קדושתך נקדיש. ושבחך אלוהינו מפינו לא ימוש לעולם ועד, כי אל מלך גדול וקדוש אתה. ברוך אתה אדוני האל הקדוש.
We now take a few moments for the meditations of our own hearts before we join back in for Oseh Shalom on page 185.
עושה שלום, שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל, ואמרו אמן. עושה שלום, שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל, ואמרו אמן. הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל, אמן. עושה שלום, שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל, ואמרו אמן. ועל כל ישראל,
As we prepare this morning to welcome the Torah into our midst, we take a few moments to welcome each other. And so I encourage you to turn to maybe the person next to you or behind you, especially if you don't know them, and say Shabbat Shalom. We welcome the Torah into our midst, beginning on page 186.
אין כמוך ואלוהים אדוני, ואין כמעשיך. מלכותך מלכות כל עולמים, וממשלתך בכל דור ודור. אדוני מלך, אדוני מלך, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. אדוני עוז לעמו ייתן, אדוני יברך את עמו בשלום. אב הרחמים היטיבה ברצונך את ציון, תבנה חומות ירושלים, כי בך לבד בטחנו. מלך הרם ונישא, אדון עולמים. ויהי בנשוא אהרון, ויאמר משה, קומה אדוני, ויפוצו אויביך, וינוסו משנאיך מפניך. כי מציון תצא תורה, כי מציון תצא תורה. ודבר אדוני מירושלים, ברוך שנתן תורה תורה. תורה, תורה, לעמו ישראל בקדושתו. שמע ישראל, אדוני אלוהינו, אדוני אחד, אחד אלוהינו, גדול אדוננו, קדוש שמו. קראו לאדוני איתי, ונרוממה שמו יחדיו, לך אדוני.
Be seated. This week's parasha, Korach, is focused on rebellion. A scintillating topic, we find ourselves drawn into the drama as our protagonist, Korach, gathers a gang of his rebel friends around him and attempts a coup d'etat against Moses and Aaron, desiring his own piece of the priesthood. Korach makes the point that Kulam Kedoshim, all of Israel are holy. Now, this might be considered a fair statement. According to Jewish tradition, we are all made in the image of the divine, so why do Moses and Aaron get to be particularly close to God? Why do they get to be special? Ultimately, Korach's campaign fails in epic fashion. God, upon witnessing this rebellion, is furious and annihilates Korach and his cronies, who are famously swallowed by the earth, never to be heard from again, and those remaining are beset by plague. Amidst such harsh punishment, we have to ask ourselves whether said punishment was warranted and why it was so harsh. After all, it might seem healthy to speak truth to power, to forge a more equitable arrangement, perhaps most especially when you have been taught that you too are sacred in God's eyes. However, Rashi teaches us that Korach and his crew were punished so brutally, not because of their actions, but the intentions behind them. Rashi posits that Korach was not seeking his slice of the power pie in order to establish a fairer, more equal hierarchy, but rather to separate himself from the community so as to sustain sustain dissent, and place himself on a pedestal. Subsequently, although we are always able to question the powers that be and campaign for a just world, in fact, our tradition implores this of us when it is written, way back in Exodus, Tzedek, tzedek, tirdof, justice, justice, you shall pursue. But we are also a tradition that believes that we should not separate ourselves from the community. As such, perhaps the sordid story of Korach tells us that we can indeed be rebels, but that we should be rebels with a cause, the improvement of our community. And today we'll make a side note that we are definitely honoring someone who is very much someone that improves our community as we celebrate together the 57th bar mitzvah of Aria Waldman, who will a beautiful 18, lucky high number, with friends, with family, with this beautiful kiddush that we will have downstairs afterwards. And he will be reading Torah for us today, beginning with Numbers 16, chapter 16, verse 1, which can be found on page 1003 in the Chumash. So, Aria, if you would come up, please. And for our first Aliyah, I would like to call Carla Boudot, Chaya Miriam Bat Yisrael, Moshe Ufnina, La Aliyah.
Down at the lowest. I don't know. This side. Kids, if they want.
Baruch Hu et Adonai Hamvarach. Baruch Adonai Hamvarach Leolam Vaed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam Asher Bachar Banu Mikol Hamim Benatan Lanu et Torato. Baruch Atah Adonai Noten HaTorah.
Amen.
Amen. Vayikach Korach ben Yitzhar ben Kat ben Levi Vedotan v'Aviraham b'nei Eliyav ve'on ben Pelet b'nei Reuven v'yakumu lifnei Moshe v'anashim mibnei Yisrael 50 ו200 nisiei Eda kriei moed anshe Shem v'yikalu al Moshe v'Aharon v'yomruhu aleihem rav lechem ki chol eda kulam kedoshim uvbetocham Adonai umadua titnasuhu al kal Adonai v'yishma Moshe v'yipol al panav v'yedaber el Korach ve'el kol adato לאמור בוקר ויודע אדוני את אשר לו ואת הקדוש והקריב אליו ואת אשר יבחר בו יקריב אליו זאת עשו קחו לכם מחתות קורח וכל עדתו ותנו בהן אש ושימו עליהן קטורת לפני אדוני מחר והיה האיש אשר יבחר אדוני הוא הקדוש רב לכם בני לוי
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah emet v'chayei olam nata b'tochenu Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Sarah Rivka Rachel v'Leah hu yivarech et ha'aliyah hayom. Carla, this is just a blessing to say, firstly, thank you for, in honor of Torah, in honor of Shabbat, and in honor of Aria's special bar mitzvah anniversary, for gracing us with the Aliyah this morning. We appreciate this show of friendship. We appreciate this show of solidarity with your community, and for leading us. And if there is anything you're celebrating, we would also like to honor that.
Thank you.
for the gift of Shabbat, for the gift of being here. So we are so thrilled to celebrate. And also thank you, Aria, who is also a wonderful support in our morning minyan every day of the week at 7:30 a.m. So anybody who would like to join us there is more than welcome, either in person or online. So Carla, if you could come over here. And for our second aliyah, I would like to call up Denise Gordon and Dennis Chow. Ya'amdu, Shoshana bat Moshe v'Liba, v'David ben Avraham v'Sara la'aliyah.
Baruch hu et Adonai hamavorach. Baruch Adonai hamavorach le'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol hamim v'natan lanu et torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. V'yomer Moshe el Korach shimu naha b'nei Levi hameat ki מכם כי הבדיל אלוהי ישראל אתכם מעדת ישראל להקריב אתכם אליו לעבוד את עבודת משכן אדוני ולעמוד לפני העדה לשרתם ויקרב אותך ואת כל אחיך בני לוי איתך וביקשתם גם כהונה לכן אתה וכל עדתך הנועדים על אדוני ואהרון מהו כי תלינו עליו וישלח משה לקרוא לדתן ולאבירם בני אליאב ויאמרו לא נעלה המעט כי העליתנו מארץ זבת חלב ודבש לעמיתנו במדבר, כי תשתרר עלינו גם השתרר. אף לא אל ארץ זבת חלב ודבש, הביאתנו ותיתן לנו נחלת שדה וכרם. עיני האנשים ההם תנקר לא נעלה.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torat emet v'chayei olam nata betochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Ve'imotenu Avraham, Yitzchak v'Yaakov, Sarah, Rivka, Rachel v'Leah, hu yivarech et ha'olim ha'ela. This is just to also say thank you and to extend the blessing of the congregation to you, Denise and Dennis, for firstly your friendship to Aria. I understand you're part of a biking group together, a bicycling group maybe. And I saw this firsthand actually just this past Sunday when you two came and supported Holy Grounds Cafe in your bike gear. You'd had a beautiful ride that morning, and it was lovely to hear about and lovely to meet you. So once Holy Ground starts up again, maybe you could join them for a bike ride and then a coffee here. So thank you very, very much for your friendship, for your support, and your beautiful singing voices. Thank you.
Toda rabba. Shabbat shalom.
And for our third and final aliyah this morning, I'd like to call Terry Quiroz and Alberto Quiroz. Ta'amdu, Cyril Shira bat Avraham, v'Yehuda Ariel ben Avraham ve'Orli la'aliyah.
Baruch hu et Adonai hamevorach.
Baruch Adonai mevorach le'olam va'ed.
Baruch Adonai mevorach le'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Vayichar למשה מאוד, ויאמרו אל אדוני, אל תפן אל מנחתם, לא חמור אחד מהם נשאתי, ולא הראותי את אחד מהם. ויאמר משה אל קורח, אתה וכל עדתך היו לפני אדוני, אתה והם ואהרון מחר. וקחו איש מחתתו, ונתתם עליהם קטורת, והקרבתם לפני אדוני, איש מחתתו, 50 ו200 מחתות, ואתה ואהרון איש מחתתו. ויקחו איש מחתתו, ויתנו עליהם אש, וישימו עליהם קטורת, ויעמדו פתח אוהל מועד, ומשה ואהרון. ויקהל עליהם קורח את כל העדה אל פתח אוהל מועד, וירא כבוד אדוני אל כל העדה.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, אשר נתן לנו תורת אמת, וחיי עולם נטע ותוהנו. ברוך אתה אדוני נותן התורה.
משברך אבותינו ואימותינו אברהם, יצחק ויעקב, שרה, רבקה, רחל ולאה, who yivarech et ha'olim ha'ele. Thank you so much to Terry and Alberto for your beautiful reading just now, for your clear friendship with Aria, and I also believe I got a beautiful email about the Rosh Chodesh this past week from you, Terry. So for all of the work that you do, you both do to support our community as well. Thank you very, very much for being here. And with the Torah in our midst, we turn our thoughts to those who are in need of healing, and we also think of the healing that our country of Canada needs to do with our Indigenous friends, as we acknowledge that the Holy Blossom Temple is hosted on the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabeg, the Haudenosaunee, Ojibwe Chippewa, and the Huron-Wendat peoples. Under the Dish with One Spoon and Two-Row Wampum Belt Covenant, many Indigenous nations agreed to peacefully share and care for the land and welcomed others, including us, to do the same. This land is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people from across Turtle Islands, and we are so privileged to be able to share and care for the land with our Indigenous brothers and sisters. And especially on this Canada weekend, we think of those efforts towards reconciliation and a fair and equitable country for all of us. We also think of those in our Holy Blossom Temple family in need of healing this Shabbat. Johanna Folk, Chana bat Gittel, Sarah Leah bat Moshe Maya v'Naomi, Miriam bat Binyamin v'Sarah Leah, Frida Mama, Joel Sears, Levi Gross, Sima bat Chaim v'Chaye Sarah, Gittel Yaakova bat Shmuel v'Sarah, Daniel ben Baruch v'Reza, and David Sandler. If there are any other names that you wish to add to our communal healing prayers, please feel free to share them as my eyes meet yours. A refuah shlema to each one of them as we are on page 191 for Tefillot L'Cholim, our prayers for healing.
Misheberach imot מקור הברכה לאבותינו. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shelema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say Amen. Mi sheberach avotenu mikor habracha leimotenu. May the source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say Amen. Please rise.
Page 100.
וזאת התורה אשר שם משה לפני בני ישראל, על פי אדוני ביד משה.
La 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 la, ya la 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 la. Ya la la la, ya la 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 la, ya la 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 la. In our Haftarah reading this morning, which comes from the book of Samuel, Saul becomes the king, and celebration abounds. Yet Samuel, the outgoing king, we must remember, did not want a king in Israel, believing it was a sign of fear and weakness in the face of enemies, and that the human nature of a, human sovereign led to straying from the path of God. Samuel gets worked up. So afraid is he that his people will turn away from Adonai in their frenzy for a king, that he rebukes them with a long laundry list of everything that went wrong when they forget their God, namely being delivered into the hands of a number of enemies. He then asks God to perform a divine act. It is not described as a miracle, but as a davar gadol, a marvelous thing, in setting thunder and rain down to earth in the middle of a wheat harvest. Although this seems shocking to us, underneath this strange request of Samuel's is the concern that power in the wrong hands can be abused or misguided. As such, in our modern world, in which we have so much that captures our attention in worship-like ways, from technology to money to sports stars to celebrities to even science, this incident reminds us to focus on what matters and to act accordingly. So we invite Jerry Prendergast to read Haftorah for us today as she celebrates the 18th anniversary of going to the mikvah, specifically to the mikvah, and we just sang of renewal and the mikvah being a renewing experience. We are on page 1021 in our Chumash, and thank you very much, Jerry.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar b'neviim tovim v'ratzav v'divreihem hana'emarim be'emet. Baruch atah Adonai abocher b'torah ובמשה עבדו, ובישראל עמו, ובנביאי המת והצדק. גם עתה התייצבו וראו את הדבר הגדול הזה, אשר אדוני עושה לעיניכם. הלא כציר חיטים היום, אקרא את אדוני, ויתן קולות ומטר, וראו, כי ראתכם רבה אשר עשיתם בעיני אדוני, לשאול לכם מלך. ויקרא שמואל אל אדוני, וייתן אדוני קולות ומטר ביום ההוא, וירא כל העם מאוד את אדוני ואת שמואל. ויאמרו כל העם אל שמואל, תתפלל בעד עבודיך אל אדוני אלוהיך, ואל נמות, כי אספנו על כל חטאותינו רעה, לשאול לנו מלך. ויאמר שמואל אל העם, אל תיראו, אתם עשיתם את כל הרעה הזאת, אך אל תסירו מאחרי אדוני, ועבדתם את אדוני בכל לבבכם, ולא תסורו, כי אחרי התוהו אשר לא יועילו ולא יצילו, כי תוהו המה, כי לא יטוש אדוני את עמו בעבור שמו הגדול, כי הואיל אדוני לעשות אתכם לא לעם. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, צור כל העולמים, צדיק בכל הדורות, האל הנאמן, האומר ועושה, המדבר ומקיים, שכל דבריו אמת וצדק, על התורה ועל עבודה ועל הנביאים ועל יום השבת הזה שנתתן לנו אדוני אלוהינו, לקדושה ולמנוחה, לכבוד ולתפארת. על הכל אדוני אלוהינו אנחנו מודים לך ומברכים אותך, יתברך שמך בפי כל חי תמיד לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני מקדש השבת.
Beautiful. With those beautiful words of Haftarah and Torah in our midst, we think of the blessings for our congregation and our people, our country, leaders, defenders, all of those beautiful things, and sure, we rise with the Torah in our midst. We're on page 195. May the one who blessed our ancestors bless this sacred congregation, all who serve it, and those who contribute to its future. May all who seek your presence find it here. Bless the house of Israel in all lands, near and far. Uphold us, shield us from oppression and hatred, and bring to fulfillment the word of Moses, your prophet. The eternal your God will make you 1,000 times as many as you are, and will bless you as promised. And together we say, Amen. We pray for all who serve in positions of leadership and responsibility in our national life. Protect them as they aid and defend your creation. Inspire them to be responsive to your will, so that Canada may be to the world an example of justice and compassion. Deepen our love for our country and our desire to serve it. Cause us to see clearly that the well-being of our nation is in the hands of all its citizens. Keep our homes safe from affliction, strife, and war.
Avinu, Avinu, שבשמיים, צור ישראל וקולו. אבינו, אבינו, שבשמיים, צור ישראל וקולו. ברך, ברך את מדינת ישראל, ראשית צמיחת גאולתנו. הגן עליך בעברת חסדך, ופרוס עליך סוכת שלומך. אבינו, אבינו, שבשמיים, צור ישראל וגואלו. אבינו, אבינו, שבשמיים, צור ישראל וגואלו. יחללו את שם אדוני, כי נשגב שמו לבדו. הודו על ארץ ושמיים, וירם קרן לעמו. תהילה לכל חסידיו, לבני ישראל עם קרובו. הללויה, הללויה. עץ חיים היא למחזיק עמה, ותומכיה מאושר. ברכיה נורכי נועם, וכל נתיבותיך שלום. השיבנו אדוני אליך, ונשובה. חדש, חדש ימינו, חדש ימינו כקדם.
It's my privilege to invite my colleague and friend, Associate Rabbi Sam Kay, to share some words of Torah.
Thank you, Rabbi McCarroll. A beautiful service so far this morning, and Shabbat Shalom to everyone. Thank you to all who have participated both in words of worship and in words of Torah, to our teacher, Rabbi McCarroll, who has done a beautiful job, and of course to our Chazan, who has led us beautifully and elevated this room and elevated our souls. Before I begin, I do just want to lay out one of those fun trivia moments that it is distinctly possible that within this week's Parshat Korach, we actually find the beginning of the hint of the name of our congregation. Because it is within this Parsha that Aaron's staff begins to blossom. And while it does not explicitly say Pirkei Kodesh in that moment, they are referenced in later texts as the holy blossoms that come from Aaron's staff. And so I thought that was worth mentioning as a brief little moment of Torah before diving back into insurrection and betrayal. Kol ha'edah kulam kedoshim. All of the community of God, everyone is holy. As far as heresy goes, it's not so bad. Because these are, as Rabbi McCarroll taught us earlier, the words of Korach, the grand rebel of Torah, whose story we are reading this week. He is this Levite prince, It's important to note, a cousin to Moses, and the insurrection that he leads captures the hearts and minds of many in the Israelite community. But as seductive as his argument is, it can't actually be the entirety of the truth. We know this from context, because God's actions are in such violent rebuke to this argument. The earth itself swallows Korach up and all that follow him. And we must know that a fair and just-minded God and a Torah that serves as the source of wisdom and compassion does not punish those who are expressing valid, differing opinions from their leaders and teachers, because there wouldn't be any Jews left if that was the case. And therefore, our rabbinic ancestors are unable to accept that Korach and his arguments have the same meaning on the surface as they do in their depths. Words have meaning, yes, but cultural understanding and context are necessary. And here is an example that I'm sure everyone in this room will instantly understand. Imagine for a moment that you are part of a team and that you are working hard, working night after night to complete a project. And so you as team leader might try to motivate the people around you, and you might unknowingly draw from a sports metaphor. We're almost at the finish line. You might use some kind of journey-related language. Look, it's the light at the end of the tunnel. And if things are particularly grim, you might even quote poetry saying, it is darkest before the dawn. But even though it might apply, you would never utter the phrase, work will set you free. And you would certainly never say it in German. Because words carry worlds inside of them. Kol ha'edah kulam kadoshim, all of the community of God, everyone is holy. It sounds innocent and it sounds good, agreeable, democratic, inclusive, but we also know there must be something wrong with the how or the why or the who of that statement. We know that there is something sinister here. And our rabbis of blessed memory spill a lot of ink over many pages in a search for understanding. As Rabbi McCarroll pointed out, Rashi has many things to say, but one piece that he brings is a mashal, a proverb about a disloyal prince and a loving king. He says, every time the prince strays away and offends his father, loyal friends to the king try and reunite the two. But after the fourth time that the prince turns his back on the king, the friends realize there's not much more that they can do. Israel sins with the calf. Moses implores. They sin with grumbling and whispering. Moses prays. And just last week, they sinned by following the advice of the spies. And even here too, Moses speaks on their behalf. But here is the fourth time. And Amar Rashi, Korach comes with disloyalty and a selfish desire to rule, and Moses falls on his face. How often can I go and bother the Holy One? Blessed be God. The Gur Aryeh and Sforno see the issues of Korach and his band as a separate issue than general Israelite stiff-neckedness. The Gur Aryeh, in fact, says that this isn't even a targeted coup at all. It is rather purely an attempt to usurp the Kohenic line, the line of priests which will come from Aaron. Every nation needs a leader, and Moses is ours, says Korach in the voice of the rabbi. But where has Moses gone astray? By establishing Moses' own family as the family of the priesthood. Kol ha'edah kadoshim, all of us are holy, anyone can do the job. And where is my proof? Well, according to the Sforno, it's actually you, Moses. You're the proof. You aren't a Kohen. You're not Aaron's son, but you made sacrifices in the tabernacle. Therefore, if a Levite who's not a Kohen can do it, well, says Korach, I'm a Levite and I'm not a Kohen, Perhaps I should be the one leading the priesthood. Rabbeinu Bachya sees a different tangent on this argument, though, and thinks that Korach is after more than that, perhaps ultimate power, and that Korach, like many people who have found a corrupt desire in themselves, is beginning to project it onto those who have not done anything wrong. According to Rabbeinu Bachya, do not read Kulam Kedoshim, all are holy, as a reference to all of Israel, but only in reference to the firstborn Israelites. God earlier says, every firstborn must be made holy. And yet, says Korach once again, Moses, you're not firstborn, but you've placed yourself in a very important role. I, Korach, however, am firstborn. Perhaps then, I should be the one leading this people. Another sage, the Chizkuni, agrees, but says, no, don't just look to Korach, look to who is beside him. Yes, he is a firstborn of the Levites, but Datan and Aviram are firstborn sons of Reuben, the firstborn of the firstborn of the firstborn. So perhaps Kol ha'edah kulam kadoshim is a rallying cry to overthrow the entire structure of leadership, bring back the royal family, as it were, the primogenitor line of Reuben, not these upstart Levites and their Benjamite friend Joshua. And finally, the Or HaChaim disagrees entirely and says, none of the above. This is simply a populist uprising. Demagoguery aimed at minimizing the accomplishments of Moses by praising the common man in his stead. Kol ha'edah kulam kadoshim, all of the community is holy. God is with us, Moses, not with you. God is with us in the wilderness because of our merit, Moses, not because of yours and Aaron's. He clearly hasn't been reading the Torah lately. Therefore, let us, the common man, be permitted in every sacred space and every sacred role. Kol ha'edah kulam kadoshim. All of the community, everyone is holy. What is it then? Is it a caste system battle for the right to be God's messenger, a fight between royal tribes, a populist uprising, an apologetic, or is it simply the last straw that throws open the deep pains of a traumatized community? As with many rabbinic commentaries, there is no singular correct answer. Instead, though, we need to point out that the collective wisdom of our people is clear. The motto contains pious words, but they are not spoken with holy intent, and they do not have sacred intentions. Words carry worlds inside of them, and simple slogans often carry hidden ideologies. I have been thinking a lot lately about slogans and about Korach, especially as I watch the news. News that comes from Ukraine, news that comes from the United States, and news that comes from Israel. In Ukraine, it's no secret that the Russian media has used the slogan of denazification as a polite fiction for its invasion. And in fact, in May, the Russian spokesman, Sergei Lavrov, doubled down that denazification and attacking a state led by a Jewish president are separate issues because, and I quote, the most ardent anti-Semites are usually Jews, end quote. I doubt that there is a person in this room who isn't attracted on some level to the idea of denazification. So much of our post-World War II Jewish life and identity is rooted in memorializing the experience of the Holocaust, but also in battling attempts to forget it, minimize it, or repeat it. But when we get past the slogan, we realize very quickly that what the Jewish community and what the Russian government mean when they talk about denazification are not the same thing. As Jews, we want to see the world denazified because we are ultimately in a zero-sum game. Either they will exist or we will. But for the Russian government, the classification of Nazi is a pleasant slogan for political will. Meanwhile, in the United States of America, there is currently a battle defining religion in public schools and how the separation of church and state should function. Joe Kennedy, a public high school coach in Bremerton, Washington, has for many years led personal, private pre-game prayers on the 50-yard line. And his right was this week defended by the Supreme Court of the United States of America. As a religious community, as a religious person, I would hope that you would join me in being vigorously pro-personal and private prayer. And yet, once again, when we get past the soundbite slogan, we find that these quote-unquote personal and private prayers often included anywhere between 50 to 200 people. The team, the participants, the well-wishing fans, and now ideologically associated political allies. To me, a personal private prayer means having the freedom to express the spiritual longing, which is innate to the human spirit. But down in Bremerton, it seems that personal private prayer is the free rein to reinforcing Christian dominance in the American public sphere. And in Israel, this week as the Bennett-Lapid Unity Coalition comes to an end, and Israel returns to elections for the 5th time in 3 years, there are, of course, all sorts of grand slogans and claims coming from every corner of society. Some are minimizing the very real failures and challenges of the last government, while others go the exact opposite way and blame it for the multitude of global issues which stem from far beyond Israel's borders. And around an election, we always expect political rhetoric. But there are lines and there are norms which have lately been blurred in the Jewish state. In recent months, entire parties and politicians throughout the Knesset have voted directly against their own ideals and directly against their own constituents, all in the name of keeping this past coalition together or breaking it down. And Times of Israel editor David Herzog has already warned that this upcoming election will be the least traditional and most bad faith election in Israeli history, as more people will cast votes out of gut feeling than fact and personal connection to or exhaustion with a candidate than in any amount of national interest. Bad faith. Ultimately, that's what this week's Torah portion is about. It is about bad faith and bad faith arguments. Arguments which appear to be reasonable, logical, ethical, aligned with our own interests, ideals, and yet we understand somehow deep in ourselves something is being twisted. And if you have ever been on the receiving end of such an argument, you know the feeling. You can see it coming. You can sense it, that gotcha moment, often right before it is sprung. And that gotcha is ultimately based on the intentional misunderstanding, the narrowing or expanding of a few words so that they go far beyond their original scope. Removed from nuance, painted in broad strokes, these are words that mean whatever they need to at whatever moment it serves the speaker, which is, of course, in direct opposition to what I've been saying today. Bad faith arguments are words that are empty of the worlds inside of them. Bad faith arguments, then, must be met as Korach was, with honesty and with transparency, with ideological clarity, with nuance, with sincerity, all the things that they lack. And I am reminded of a prayer from the Mishkan Tefillah, the Reform Movement prayer book, which is a creative understanding of our prayer for the study of Torah. And the author writes, "We seekers of God, how do we find you? In good deeds and in the study of Torah. And in your search for us, where do you find us? You find us in the bending of the knee, in the rigor of study, in the honesty of commerce, in a good heart and through decency, in respect, true fellowship, companionship, love, truth, and peace, and in the no that is really a no, and the yes that is really yes." And this is the redemptive power of Torah. Because when we live in such a way, when we live with Torah at our core, then indeed the words of Korach are no longer a bad faith trap waiting to spring, some kind of sinister agenda. Instead, they can become the truth of our world. When our words speak the no that is really a no, and when we speak the yes that is really a yes, well then, Kol ha'edah kulam kadoshim, all of the community of God, all of us are holy. Together, let us strive for such a world. Shabbat Shalom.
Oh, guide my steps and help me find my way. I need your shelter now. Rock me in your arms and guide my steps, and help me make this day a song of praise to you. Rock me in your arms and guide my steps. Ufros aleinu sokar shlomecha. Ufros aleinu sokar Ofros aleinu sukar shlomecha. Ofros aleinu sukar Uferos aleinu, uferos aleinu.
Thank you, Cantor. Shkoch. Thank you. It's my pleasure to invite Ellen Cole to offer up our congregational announcements.
Shabbat Shalom. I am Ellen Cole, and it is my privilege to serve as the Vice President of the Department of Administration on the Board of Directors here at Holy Blossom. It is my pleasure to welcome fellow congregants and guests, whether in person or online, local or from afar, to Holy Blossom Temple. Yasher Koach to Aryeh Waldman and Jerry Prendergast for chanting so beautifully today. We thank Rabbi Kay, Rabbi McCarroll, and Cantor Rosen for leading us. We also thank our pianist today, our accompanist, Gordon Brown, who also thrilled us with his voice with Cantor Rosen, and for all of them for enhancing our services. We are grateful to our facilities staff and live stream production team for making our services safe and accessible for all. Thank you to Aryeh and Val Waldman for sponsoring today's Kiddush on the occasion of the 57th anniversary of Aryeh's bar mitzvah. Mazel tov again. Mazel tov to Alex Sapira and Max Lipares on the birth of their son, Charlie Wolf. The proud grandparents are Sam and Judy Sapira and Lauren Midlarski and David Bellum, and great-grandmothers are Rosalind Zitzer and Helene Midlarski. Our condolences to the mourners among us. We will soon recite the Mourners Kaddish, and your Holy Blossom community will stand with you at this time of loss. May our congregation be a source of strength and comfort for you. We invite you to join us for daily morning and afternoon services and to reach out to our clergy if you need any additional support during this challenging time. As for upcoming events, on July the 16th, we are thrilled to welcome back our wisdom generation to the Dorot Summer Gathering, which will include a luncheon and a musical programming. We hope to see you there. On Friday, July 29th, before Kabbalat Shabbat services, please come and enjoy a nosh and some good company in the open courtyard or in the lower level gallery with an opportunity to meet Rabbi McCarroll and Rabbi Kay. For more occasions to get to know our clergy, please check our website to explore our summer learning opportunities. Holy Blossom is bustling as usual. Early Childhood Center, Youth Education Center, Family Engagement, Lifelong Learning, Worship, HB Together. Details of these programs and many more opportunities for community and celebration can be found on our website, holyblossom.org. Shabbat Shalom.
Ellen, stay with us as we rise together as one community. Turn to page 200 for the words of Aleinu.
עלינו לשבח אדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית, שלא עשנו כגויי ארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל המונם, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא, ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו אחד.
Please be seated, if even only for a moment. It's time now to recite Kaddish Yatom, our mourner's Kaddish, and bring to mind the memory of those we love and who have been a light in our life. If you are a mourner today, either whether you are in Shloshim, the first year, or whether you are in Shiva, if you are observing a yahrzeit, any form, we invite you to rise at this time. We recall the yahrzeits of the following members of our community: Marlene Bloom, Max Bloom, Shirley Bonin, Gay Bohms, Ann Bregman, Charlotte Brody, Sylvia Burns, Mary Cohen, Charles Cohen, Harris Cohen, Sidney Koopman, Jacob Davis, Lauren Dunkelman, Shirley Firestone, Meyer Florence, Abe Garson, Ladislav Gartner, Morris Greenbaum, Shirley Gula, Irving Handelman, Carl Hendeles, Morris Kanoff, Morris Killam, Joel Levine, Mildred Laxton, Dora Lifsitz, Vivian Manny, Lena Meltz, Marcia Papernick, Charles Raffelman, Irene Reese, Lionel Rohr, Philip Rosenberg, Florence Rother, Irving Rubin, Rose Shirkin, Jack Silverman, Philip Simmons, Valentine Waldman, Stanley Wiegand, Frank Weinstock, Harry Zelig. And we are currently observing the Shloshim, the remembrance within a month of death of Carol Ruth Arbess, my apologies, Susan Chayton, Charles Cohen, Fern Dater, Sally Libman, Veronica Mandel, Valerie Packer, Peter Samu, Charles Tabachnik, and Barry Zellico. Are there any other names to be added? Are there any names to be repronounced? Then with our mourners, I invite everyone to rise as a singular community so that we may praise God's holy name with Kaddish Yatom. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah. Ba'alma divrach yiroteh v'yamlich malchuteh. V'chayechon uvyomechon v'chayeh dechol Beit Yisrael. Ba'agala uvizman kariv v'imru amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mevorach leolam ulamei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh. V'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shmei dekudesha. Brichu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata. Tushbechata v'nechamata. Da'amiran ba'alma v'imru amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya. V'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'ramav. Hu ya'aseh shalom. Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. May the source of peace and peace to all who mourn, comfort to all who are bereaved, amongst us, amongst our people Israel, and all the nations of the world. And together we say, Amen.
Ose shalom b'mromav, uyase shalom. Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'himeru. Amen. Kiddush can be found on page 447. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם ביני ובין בני ישראל אותי לעולם כי 6 ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ וביום השביעי שבת וינפש על כן ברך אדוני את יום השבת ויקדשהו את סברי ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם בורא פרי הגפן. Let's see, we'll bring it over. Robert, please. There you go.
Can I introduce you all to a tradition in my family? Okay, so it's a bit silly, but it comes from the Talmud. So we cover the challah so that she doesn't become jealous about the fact that we're blessing everything else before her. Because normally, when we eat bread, it is the very first thing that we bless. And so this is a tradition that came to my family, that when you unveil the challah, everyone goes, oh, what a beautiful challah. So that you add to the mitzvot, so that you make it a little bit nicer. So today, we'll try it out as a community, okay? On 3, 2, 1. Oh, what a beautiful challah. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamotzi lechem min haaretz b'te'avon.
Adon Olam, page 439. 539.
אדון עולם אשר מהלך בטרם כל יצא נברא לעת נעשה וחפצו כל אזי מלך שמו נקרא אזי מלך שמו נקרא ואחרי ככלות הכל לבדו ימלוך נורא והוא היה והוא והוא יהיה בתפארה והוא יהיה בתפארה והוא אחד ואין שני לעם שלו להכבירה בלי ראשית בלי תכלית ולא העוז והמשרה ולא העוז והמשרה והוא אלי וחי גואלי בצור חבלי ביצרה והוא ניסי ומנוס לי מנת כוסי ביום מקרא מנת כוסי ביום מקרא בידו אבקיד רוחי בעת תישן ויהירה ועם רוחי גביעתי אדוני לי ולא אירא אדוני לי ולא אירא. Shabbat shalom. Shabbat shalom.
Please join us for Kiddush downstairs.
Beautiful. Great job. Very insightful.